Hey everybody, this is Gainer Milky and this is Tea with Miss G, and I've got my Alice in Wonderland tea cup. So we're here to spill tea, which is trauma, empowerment, and action, and serve up some wisdom and hopefully some serenity. So today I wanted to talk a little bit more about owning your disappointments and doing a disappointment detox, which is something that I've been kind of working through um, as part of my Plan D framework, and then also uh, a new series here on Tea with Miss G. So one of my, I guess, disappointments that I hadn't really owned, and maybe it's something actually that I've always have said the past few years, is I didn't really have any regrets when it came to the way that I had raised my daughter so far. But I think looking back and in light of some of the things that, I've become more conscious of recently, is that I do have a little bit of disappointment that I indoctrinated her maybe a little bit too much, in my opinion, with all of the princess fairy tale kind of social constructs. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just saying that, in retrospect, I think about it, I'm like, you know, at the time, she just loved all of that stuff. But I didn't think I was so unconscious in my own place that I didn't even, I was like so detached and disowned from my own self. I didn't even realize that I was, uh, had fallen actually into that, I guess, princess, princess, um, mind space. And it certainly didn't serve me well because it made me rather unconscious to the abuse that I was enduring in my relationship. And then it wasn't until more recently when I kind of had to do some deep diving into my own beliefs and what were the things that were creating the circumstances that I was in, that I really thought about how, the idea of being the chosen princess and that was going to save us all had played into the way that I had, selected some of her experiences and the things that she interacted with. So, not that it's right or wrong, I'm just saying it kind of was reflecting on it as I reflect on my own, disappointments and actual disbelief in how far I thought I had come, but then how really disrespected and demeaned I had also been. And when I say that, I don't say it lightly. I think that um, relationships can be difficult, but today I wanted to just delve into this idea of, the fairy tales that we, tell ourselves. And sorry, I had to move my mouse there, but they're not always serving us well. And that was certainly something that from childhood, not that I was treated as a princess, quite the opposite. And we didn't have a lot of princess things. But it was more the idea that, like, you know, essentially you were gonna get married, or I saw the, like, my mother and my grandmother's married, but really not necessarily all that happy. And so it actually didn't look that appealing to me at the time. And I wasn't really, I actually wasn't a princess girl. I was a pioneer girl. I loved Little House on the Prairie and very simple lifestyle. I was really obsessed with that and just like how calm it was. And, you know, I wasn't really into like the Cinderella and Snow White at the time. But then it became something that you wanted to indulge your child in. As I grew older, at least that was the Disney magic type of thing. And it's also spun in fairy tales, of course. But I did a video a while back, and it was called When Prince Charming Goes to Prince Harming. And I think that's something that we don't talk enough about with um, young people and people of all ages, that there are warning signs that you shouldn't overlook. Especially, it's easy to do if you are desperately wanting to be the chosen one. And a friend of mine and I were just talking about how one of her son's friends, uh, girlfriends, is dating somebody, and there's some red flags there. So how do we tie this all up into really having that tale as old as time, where when you think about how partnerships have evolved over the years, I'm sure that in the princess era, it's a like Beauty and the Beast era, there were a lot of abusive relationships going on. So that still exists today, unfortunately, and it's not just heterosexual relationships, I realize, but oftentimes there is a gender inequality and gap that gets exploited, and that can be really sad. So, how do you feel in terms of some of the disparity that goes on? I know one thing that became very obvious to me in my relationships is that you know, I unfortunately had partnered with people who love the fact that I was able to make money and go to work and then run my own business, and kind of took that either for granted, or in my latter relationship, I think they wanted to actually take advantage of me. So the patriarchy wants a paycheck, but not necessarily parity with their partner, and there's not a lot of respect. And I realize that can go in non, non-gender relationships as well, things that are not love relationships, could be business relationships. But I think that that's something, that we need to think about educating our kids on as they're looking for partners, is that abuse is not just physical and emotional, it can be financial too. So this is definitely, an area I don't think that there's enough education on. And I think that's part of why I want to try to do some of these videos, because even, you know, a young person probably won't watch them, but maybe a mom or a grandparent will, and or a dad. And I think we can help to, help people realize that it's okay to leave. I know in my marriage, I knew early that it probably was not the best decision for me. But then, I'd also been trained, if you will, that you stuck with it. And it just didn't enter into my consciousness that I could do anything different until, thankfully, we had a family member who was seeking to get divorced, and I was like, that was probably uh could be an open door for me. And so anyway, not saying it's easy, but I think too that if we um share with our young people and in general, like what are the red flags of relationships um, that you can back away from, and also give them the frameworks and tools to be able to have those conversations and exit a relationship safely. That would be um, what I would aim to do as well. So, just some thoughts about, not feeding the fairy tale, so to speak, and one of the, I guess, disappointments that I have, just looking back on maybe some of the ways that I indoctrinated that princess vibe Although my daughter says that she loved it and she doesn't feel like it was negative for her. So, just some thoughts on owning your disappointments and, in all areas of life, which is love, identity, family, and enterprise, which are the things that we talk about in our conscious success plan.